New Mexico, go ahead.
So I'm Jeff Mann, New Mexico DOT. State pavement engineers, my second year coming here. I was here last year, enjoyed it. Kevin mentioned earlier, learn a lot, meet a lot of good people. I think it was 2012, maybe, I was here for Boise. I was with this group in Boise. Again, my name's Jeff Mann. I'm with the New Mexico DOT. My role or my title at DOT is a state pavement engineer. I'm kind of involved in pavement design. The pavement data collection is under me. Pavement management is under me. I look at my role at the department as mostly I'm kind of a consultant, right? We'll get into some more specifics, but the New Mexico DOT is very decentralized. In fact, we have 6 districts, and those districts kind of, don't want to use the word kind of, they're really responsible for maintaining our roads, maintaining preservation and rehabilitating our roadways. So they really get to make those decisions. But with that, the intent of my PowerPoint was kind of to give us a breakdown of the state of New Mexico, our preservation and rehabilitation treatments, some thoughts on pavement management, and then how we're trying to develop a preservation culture. So a little bit on the DOT. I mentioned it's 6 districts. We have a general office out of Santa Fe. It's where I'm located. Pavement treatments are generally decentralized. I mentioned that. We have of course, we have a STIP. All states have a STIP. Most of our preservation treatments are through contract maintenance. Some of the districts do have their own paving crews, chip seal crews, things like that, some crack sealing. Generally, the majority of our pavement preservation treatments are through contract maintenance. I mentioned, that's the second bullet there, second sub-bullet, sorry. The districts are generally afforded, they're provided a budget for STIP and then provided a maintenance budget. And that's around I think currently it's about $7 million. And that's all encompassing, this maintenance and maintenance budget. We're a big state. We are the 5th largest landmass, and I think we're just above 2 million folks. But with that said, we've got around 30,000 lane miles we manage. Total NHS is just north of 12,000. Interstate mileage just north of 4. Just north of 6,000 lane miles are chip seal surface treatments. And unfortunately for the concrete folks, we've only got about 250 some odd concrete pavement miles. Majority of that's in Albuquerque, for whatever reason, right? Politics aside, I just think that the state of New Mexico, for whatever reason, is comfortable with the flexible materials as opposed to the rigid materials. A little bit on the pavement management, pavement related. We do collect pavement management data, pavement distress data. We've been collecting by automated measurements since 2013. We have contracted out with Fugro starting in 2018. We have a 4-year contract with them. All that is since 2013 has been populated in our pavement management database. We use the Agile system. We're currently running the 7.4 version, 7.4.3. For those people that are Agile tied in, we're moving to the SaaS environment, which is a little cleaner, a little bit more up to date. It's on their server, which makes it a little easier. Spent a lot of time on our Agile system, put together a committee. I think I spoke about this last year, but those folks who weren't here last year put together a committee in 2012 and 2013 to develop the Agile system to really focus on pavement preservation treatments. Lots of decision trees. The system really recognizes the cost benefit of these preservation treatments, and that's really a lot of the focus on the PMS database. I need to mention the New Mexico DOT uses the OCI, Overall Condition Index. It's similar as PSI or any other state index. Our overall condition index is a slight twist. It doesn't really consider smoothness, but it considers about every other distress, at least specific to asphalt in terms of longitudinal cracking, transverse cracking, fatigue cracking, There's 8 specific ones: raveling and weathering, block cracking, which we're trying to remove. But that OCI is really is a composite index, if you will. We use that for reporting. We use that to confirm our good, fair, poor, Federal Highway Map 21. We use that for budgeting. We use that for pavement treatments. Our decision trees are based on our OCI, just like many states. A little bit on our Map 21 state of good repair things. Our interstate OCI, we're trying to. The gentleman from Utah, I think, had some nice stuff this afternoon about where we're trying to keep our roadways. So if you put on your pavement cap and you think what standard OCI do we want to keep that at? We want to keep our interstates at an OCI of around 70. What I'm missing here is where they are currently. We're currently just shy of 70. So we've got a little bit of work to do. U.S. roadways, an overall condition index of 65. It's a little lower. And New Mexico roadways, OCI of 60. They used to be broken down into NHS and non-HS. The gentleman from Utah mentioned, I think he was the program development engineer. He mentioned that no one really knew NHS and non-HS. So that's why we transitioned to these OCI as in terms of state and U.S. designations. Moving on, our pavement preservation treatments are those, I think most states follow these: crack seal, chip seal, fog seal, cape seal, Nova chip, it's pretty standard. Microsurfacing, hot in situ recycling. We typically do all 3. Brazier mixes. Not sure a lot of states do brazier, but we've had some fairly good success on the low volume roadways. High added cold in situ. I guess there's many times cold in situ is kind of thrown in the pavement preservation bucket. We like it. We've done it several times. Cold central plant recycling. I think the Minroads and NCAT mentioned that. We've been messing with cold central plants since probably about 15. While not in there, FDR with foam, we did that in 2012. That's not really a preservation treatment. Of course, our tried and true is the single lift mill and inlay. We really focused the single lift mill and inlay probably since the middle 2000s, and we do it quite a bit. A debate could be whether we do it at the right time, but certainly we do a lot of it. That's a lot of really what our preservation treatment is, these single lift inlays. So we're asked to provide a by the numbers, kind of a general treatment versus lane miles placed versus expected life. I could have probably used 2 pages for this, but I wanted to pick generally what people are acquainted with. Chip seal, fog seal, crack seal, Nova chip, microsurfacing. We're in a 7-year cycle with our chip seals. I've seen anywhere between 6 and 10. I think it's inconsistent use in terms of when to chip seal. I think a lot of it has to do with raveling, maybe complaints, but usually we're on a 7-year cycle on the chip seal. There's your cost. $12,000 is about our average chip seal cost per lane mile. Nova chip, crack seal, CIR at the bottom, cold central plant, that's dated since about 2015 or so, about $2 a square yard inch. Microsurfacing, Nova chip. So our years, of course, that estimated life really depends on the condition of the roadway, as we all know. You get some reflective cracking. Of course, I'd argue that reflective cracking is not really an indicator of failure, right? We all see that unless you do some sort of deeper recycling treatment. Perfect scenario would be able to do a Nova chip or, well, any sort of preservation treatment and come back and do a crack seal. So you just extended your pavement life out a little bit more. So in terms of pavement life, a little bit of pavement preservation culture. We are required, the state DOT is required to provide a lane miles preserved in terms of a performance measure. We present this to LFC, Legislative Finance Committee, yearly. Our goal is to be above the 2,500 miles mark, and I think if you go back, see if I can do this there, and you add all those line miles placed, chip seal, fog seal, crack seal, HIR, Nova chip, microsurfacing, we're close and above, I think, the 22.5 or 25.50, sorry. Usually we're shooting about 3,000 or so lane miles preserved. We're also required to provide a % lane miles rated fair or better. That's also a state performance measure. Call it a federal highway requires a good, fair, poor. New Mexico DOT requires these performance measures. Very similar. Those are our goals for the rated fair or better. That's where we would use our pavement condition index, OCI, or pavement condition rating index. We have several conferences throughout the year to really try to develop that sort of culture. There's a yearly conference in the spring that's focusing mostly on preservation concepts. We've also put together a technical steering committee, if you will. Once MAP 21 came out, we kind of put together maintenance and project development engineers together in a room and really kind of discuss how we're trying to meet these measurements, or how we're trying to meet these goals, % good and % poor. I think we talked about mentoring, or the good folks from Alaska talked about mentoring. That's got to be done. APA, Asphalt Pavement Alliance, hosts quarterly meetings. And while they're not specific to preservation, they are specific to mostly pavement engineering, some materials engineering in there. So there is a knowledge sharing there. In 2018, we hosted Jason and Scott. You guys were in Albuquerque for that meeting. If you recall, February, March, I think that's when that was. It's crazy how time flies. It was good. I encourage others to tie in with Jason and see if that's still available. We also, that last bullet there, and I won't bore you guys anymore, I think is we're trying to develop a memorandum. Most of our preservation treatments are state funded, and we're really trying to leverage federal highway or leverage MAP 21 and some of these preservation definitions to try to get federal highway to participate a little more on our preservation treatments. And of course, that's everybody saying their intent to promote right treatment at right time mentality. That's all I have. Is there any questions?
Jeff, one thing that jumped out at me was the cost on your microsurfacing.
Okay.
Is there, in our area, I'm in Reno and we do urban stuff, but our microsurfacing and chip seals cost about the same. And yours are up there approaching Nova chip levels. Is there do you got any thoughts on why that is in your area?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't. So you're saying ours are similar than as yours?
Like 3 or 4 or 5 times higher.
Oh, okay.
And again, in Nova chip is the thin bonded wearing courses are always, that's a pretty expensive treatment.
Right.
So anyhow, that's just one thing that I was, in your numbers, that would just struck me as unusual.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me go back and look at that. That's straight from our maintenance management database. We may not be comparing apples to oranges, if you will, in terms of equipment, in terms of labor, in terms of materials. Yeah, right, yeah. But that certainly provides me with some, I can look at some data for sure.
The chip seal cost, I mean, that's actually seems pretty cheap. Was that for state forces?
Yeah,
okay,
it's
that's
state
not
forces.
a contract cost.
No, that's
so
state forces.
That's probably explains some of the difference between micro and some of the other treatments.
Yeah, we have 6 districts. Not to talk over you, John. We have 6 districts. I think 4 have their own chip seal crews. So they're pretty much minus winter months. They're full time.
I think John probably hit on the answer, because if you're doing in-house, you're talking about materials. If you're doing microsurfacing, then you've got mobilization, you've got other costs that are added into that are not added in probably to the in-house work.
So. Right, yeah. In-house, we're looking at equipment, materials, and labor. That's exactly it, right, yeah. And I can't even think how many patrol yards we have, and many of the patrol yards have that material and support. Right, so your haul distances are even less in some areas. That's where I'm going, yeah.
They'll have crushing contracts, they're separate. And so if you were trying to actually see what is the real cost, it's sometimes really hard to gather all that to do equitable cost. Yeah,
thanks for that. Yeah, I'm merely just looking at our maintenance management database that we provide. Yeah, and really, I mean, maybe there's some unforeseen cost or unidentified costs that they don't even pick up, for sure. Thank you. Thank you.
John?
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.